Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll give everybody just a couple more seconds before we go ahead and get started. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to the Return to Campus briefing hosted by the Operational Continuity Work Group. For the next hour, we'll walk through what to expect as you plan your return to campus. We'd also like to acknowledge and thank everyone for your commitment to the university during the past 18 months as we navigate through uncharted territory. A very special thank you to our campus employees who never left and continued the campus mission and ensured the continuity of our university. We are excited to start the 21-22 academic year and are confident that the collective adherence to campus health and wellness protocols will go a long way toward making a fall quarter back a success. As a reminder, our decisions are guided by federal, state, county public health, UCOP, and campus COVID work groups. While we're living in unprecedented times and in an ever-changing landscape, we appreciate your flexibility and adaptability and shifting guidelines as we work through the pandemic. For the most recent information and guidance, please bookmark and visit the Campus Return website frequently. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Today, you'll be hearing from our presenters and panelists listed here. Next slide. And during the webinar, we'll review the operational continuity membership, provide an overview of what to expect when returning to campus, and offer some time for pre-submitted questions and time for attendees to also ask questions. Please note that the chat feature has been turned off, so if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature, and we'll be monitoring the Q&A feature and go through those questions as they come up. And if we don't have an answer for you right away, please note that we are taking notes and that we will be able to respond back to the group with the correct answer. Okay, our committee is large, as you can see, and includes a broad and diverse group of faculty, staff, students, and members of the Academic Senate. You can see the list here, and it's also posted on our work group website. We can also post a copy of this presentation on our website so that you could review it again later or share with your colleagues. So to kick off our presentation, let's start with the very first step for supervisors. Leela, can you start us off?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much, Sheila, and welcome everyone. Wanted to share with you one key process that should take place as your folks are returning to campus. And this is to make sure that you review your department needs, the plan that you have for your department, and then provide the appropriate authorization that's needed to each employee as they return to campus. So what we are asking all of our staff members to do is to complete this form, which is a remote/hybrid form, letting us know what your plans are as you return to campus and what that your schedule will be. So completing this form, if you plan to be 100% remote, or if you plan on a hybrid working 2-3 days on campus or in the office, and then the other days from home or in a remote location. So we have added a section 3.5, I believe it is, or section 2.5, letting us know it's around the vaccination policy piece. So please keep that in mind, as well as the signatures, making sure that you have the correct signatures in place. For the most part, what I'm hearing from organizational units is that this will be a DocuSign. So just making sure that if you know what your organizational units process is when it comes to having this completed and having it signed. As always, work with your supervisor as the first step to determine what is going to be the best type of the business hours that you will have, and complete this information. And this form can be found, and you'll see the link on the slide under the forms and documents in the HR website.
Great, thank you, Leela.
You're welcome.
Next slide. So what is step 2? Step 2 is for supervisors to access the H&S website and complete the Worksite specific plan. So the Worksite specific plan is a document that supports the campus-wide Cal OSHA requirement and the campus-wide COVID prevention plan, but there is a specific plan that's required at each worksite. So supervisors, you need to log in and perform the assessment based on your area of oversight, and then share the plan with all your employees within your unit. And this affords the opportunity to assess the site, review mitigation practices, and allow employees to ask questions and review the plan. Employees must sign off that they've read and understand the plan, and the plans can be printed and distributed for all of the employees in your unit. And just a note that EH&S is the office of record to receive the plans. If you're a supervisor and you've already submitted a worksite specific plan, thank you very much. If you need to make any changes, please access the site, log back in, and make the appropriate changes. And if you have any issues, EH&S is offering support. We have staff available to help troubleshoot. The website also includes a process map and guidance as well. The second bullet talks a little bit about face coverings. So as you know, we're all required to wear face coverings while on campus property. Anyone, supervisors or employees, can request face coverings from EH&S at any time. We have an online form that can be completed 24/7 with your request. And we also have N95 masks for voluntary use for individuals who have received an exemption to the vaccine policy. So for those cases, the exempted employee will be instructed by disability management on how to obtain the N95s or any other approved mask. Please note that there is a brief training requirement for voluntary use of N95s per Cal OSHA. Next slide. Sue, can you talk a little bit about the daily dashboard?
Yes, thank you. So before returning to campus for supervisors specifically, you may recall the daily, the supervisor dashboard. It's important to check the supervisor dashboard daily to determine which of your staff have completed it. The dashboard has been updated recently with color coding, and the font for the status of the employee has been bolded for easier reading. So just to give you some information about what you'll see on that dashboard, when somebody is green, that means that they're cleared to come to campus without accommodations or NPIs. When you see that their box is blue or the outside of it is blue, the employee is cleared to be on campus with accommodations and NPIs. And remember, right now we are on universal masking, so all of us do have to wear our masks at work. Yellow will mean that an employee has an incomplete status because they have not completed the daily wellness survey. If your employee is supposed to be on campus, expected to be on campus, and you're seeing that, that means that they've not completed it. So you need to make sure that they complete the daily wellness survey as soon as possible. Red will show if someone was advised to stay home. So it'll say stay at home. And so it's important to know that if you do see that, that you're taking action immediately. Remember that the supervisor will no longer receive clearance emails from the hotline, which were received previously. So it is the responsibility of the supervisor to look at the daily wellness survey. To look at the supervisor dashboard every day to ensure that your employee is in the correct status. And it's your responsibility as a supervisor to understand what your responsibilities are and to work with your designated HR partner when a staff member, particularly when they're reported as stay at home, with a red border. So just remember that that is something that you should be doing daily. Maybe it's the first thing that you do in the morning, or when you come into the office, but make sure that you are looking at that. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about what employees should do prior to returning to campus. What they should do first is, before they even return, is complete the hybrid remote work agreement that Leela talked about. And that should be signed. It's important that it is reviewed and signed between the supervisor and the employee. Review the UCR COVID-19 prevention plan. Make sure that the employee is aware that they review and acknowledge the department's worksite specific plan. So when you return to work, you should be given a copy of the worksite specific plan and you are to review and acknowledge it. If you don't receive that, then you should ask your supervisor. You should be completing the required COVID-19 prevention training in learning management system. And right now, we have about 76% of all employees who have completed the course. I'm assuming that there may be employees who haven't completed the course yet because they're waiting to return, but they should do that as soon as possible. And review your parking permit options. They have added additional options for parking, so I would recommend taking a look at those options. And I'm going to turn it over to George.
Good afternoon. I've been asked to just touch briefly on the requirements under the UCOP COVID vaccine policy. As you know, the UC system has instituted a COVID-19 vaccination policy, and employees are supposed to be in compliance with that policy in order to access any UC facility. In order to be in compliance, the employee should either submit proof of vaccination or an exemption or a deferral request via the UCR Employee Vaccine Tracking Portal. And then the policy also includes mechanism for employees that are out of compliance. So just as an update on where we are here at UCR, there are 3 notices that the policy includes for employees that are out of compliance. The first notice went out some weeks ago, and more recently, notice 2 was sent out to employees who had neither submitted their proof of vaccination or an exemption deferral request. And so UCR is at the notice 2 point. And just a reminder, if you have received that notice that you need to come into compliance with the policy, please access the Employee Vaccine Tracking Portal to take that action. After the 3rd notice, which is upcoming, we'll be at a point of corrective action or discipline according to the policy. But again, in order to avoid getting to that point, the employee just needs to submit the proof of vaccination or get approval for an exemption or deferral request. Thank you.
I'll take the next slide. As a reminder to employees, I'm sorry, was this not my slide?
I think we did this one before. Yeah, it went backwards.
Thank you. So for employees, as a reminder, complete the daily wellness survey prior to reporting to work every day that you plan to be in the on campus or in a university facility. Stay home if you don't feel well. Wear a face covering over your nose and mouth at all times when you're indoors, regardless of vaccination status. And if you need a face covering, go ahead and request it from your supervisor or EH&S if needed.
Since March of last year, we developed signs and posted them across the campus to help guide everyone on what to do and what to expect. This summer, and a little bit after the summer, we created additional updates based on Cal OSHA and CDPH guidance. And you'll notice the new signs have been posted on buildings and some room entryways. Please be aware of the signs around you. If you need additional signage or to see what other signs are available, you can visit the EH&S COVID website for signage requests or to download signs at your leisure. Here are two signs you'll see when you walk along buildings and on entryways: the Keep Yourself Healthy sign, as well as the face covering required signage. And there may be additional signage to be posted in the next few weeks and coming days. Jason, can you also speak on the other types of signage and why it's important to review the signs around you?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Sheila. And so part of the additional notifications that you'll see on the building is a result of the California legislature passing AB 685. So what is AB 685? AB 685 is a process for any site, to any work site, really, and our campus buildings are a work site, to notify individuals of potential exposure. So as you can imagine, as we're turning to class, for those of you who've been on site, you may have seen some of these signs. They now have been modified slightly. What we're looking at now with a fully operational campus is that if in the likelihood in one building there are multiple locations that have positive cases reported, what you will see here, as you see it says locations of positive COVID-19 case reported in Sproul Hall. Now this is just an example of locations that will identify the course name, the course section, classroom number, meeting time, and some other information so that if you feel as though you may have been exposed during a time period of that, you can contact the COVID hotline. However, what is also important is that if you've been identified as an individual who may have had close contact, you likely have been contacted already through the COVID resource management team with regards to information. So these signs, what's important about them? What's important about them is you can identify when an individual is in a building during a highly infectious time period. It indicates through a series of QR codes, resources that you can review for additional information or if you have additional questions. Additionally, there are some guidances, general guidances as to how the University of California is adhering to CDPH, CDC, Cal OSHA, as well as the Riverside County Department of Public Health's instituting requirements for a notification, as well as just general information with regards to your symptoms, et cetera. And so what you'll see on these buildings when you come into mainly entrances, in some cases you might see something like this posted on a classroom. Again, what's important for you to review is the areas that are listed, because if you believe you have contact, then we would strongly suggest that you reach out to the COVID Wellness Hotline or the COVID Hotline to follow up with any questions you may have there. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you very much, Jason. Next slide. Now let's talk a little bit about facility services and cleaning. Monty, can you start us off?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. So a lot of questions about cleaning on campus. Since March of 2020, facility services has been using approved disinfectant approved by the CDC and EH&S to address disinfecting across the campus. We've been using and paying attention and using this cleaning on a daily basis. We use it in high-touch areas such as restrooms, classrooms, surfaces like door handles, handrails. So we've been using the proper disinfecting cleaning solutions for this past year and a half, and we'll be continuing to do so as campus fully returns. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that our guidance for the time of cleaning not only tied to our staffing, but also to that CDC guidance. You'll see we still concentrate on restrooms and classrooms on a daily basis. Some of the common areas and hallways, although identified here as one time a week, one thing that we are working on is we're coming up with a special triage group to focus on the high touch areas custodial for all buildings with general assignment classrooms, concentrating on not only the restrooms in that area, but all of the high touch points in that area, because we know there's going to be a large volume of individuals coming in and out of those general assignment areas. So as part of fall return, we will be doing a special triage group focused just on cleaning for those areas on top of the regular routine cleaning that we have been doing and will continue to do. Because the campus does have over 7 million square feet of space, we recognize that we don't have the ability to touch every area to the comfort level of every individual on campus. So since the spring of last year, we've been providing at no charge to campus the ability to order disinfectant kits and hand sanitizers. So you'll see on this page, there is a direct link to this resource, but you can also just go to facilities.ucr.edu and hit on the fall return tab at the top, and it will take you to all of our FAQ section, as well as the ability to view the disinfecting kits and sanitizers, or just order them directly. So to date, we've handed out about 650 disinfecting kits and over 3,000 hand sanitizers. Again, this is at no charge to campus occupants, the core campus of UCR, and they're made available. So feel free to go there, tell your colleagues that are looking to have maybe more regular cleaning of their personal space, their office, their shared desk area, their conference rooms. Just because our capacity cannot hit every space on a daily basis, this is an avenue for us to partner together and make it available so everyone can make sure they're at the comfort level they have for their cleaning. Okay, next slide. One of the other questions that comes up a lot is about the HVAC systems. As everyone knows, we have a campus that has a wide variety of buildings, some from the 30s up to 2021. And so to address this, we have increased air exchanges in the buildings all throughout the period with active buildings. And since we've opened up as a campus as a whole in mid-August and into September, we've actually extended airflow from the outside indoors to maximum capacities to each of the building systems. We've also extended it as we go into the formal fall quarter, 2 hours before the opening of your building through 2 hours after the closure of your building. The goal being as much as outdoor air as possible, while still supporting comfort air, the fact that we have temperature ranges we have to adhere to, there's air quality we have to adhere to. We've maximized our filtration systems using a well-maintained filter program for all of our buildings. Our filters can be exchanged out on a regular basis throughout the building systems as well. So there is an FAQ section. We're actually going to be doing some additional updates to that in the coming week, but feel free to go to our site and take a look at that. But we have increased all to the building capacities, the air systems as much as is possible. I will go through and look at some Q&A related to facilities, and I'll try to answer those as well, or at the end with the group. Thank you. Adam,
thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Monty. Good afternoon. I'd like to take a moment to discuss portable air cleaners, as I know this has been a topic that's come up quite a bit. So portable air cleaners may be considered in some areas where adequate ventilation is difficult to achieve. I do want to remind folks that our primary control, as Monty stated, is to increase central HVAC outdoor air rates and filtration as much as possible. I do want to give a word of caution that the use of portable air cleaners alone cannot ensure adequate indoor air quality. It should be used along with other best practices recommended by the CDC and other public health entities. As you know, those other practices are vaccinations, wearing of masks, and hand hygiene. Another note here, if you are intending on using a portable air cleaner in your space or would like to procure one or set one up, please contact the Environmental Health and Safety Office to assist you with the selection of an approved device and to assist with proper placement and setup of that device. There are many devices out there that have newer technology like UV lamps and ionization. We would like to work with you on getting the correct unit for your area because some of those can actually produce indoor pollutants such as ozone. So we want to work with you on getting an approved device and also the right size device for your space. Environmental Health and Safety Office would also like to assist you with placing that device in the proper location so that it's working effectively and not causing any kind of adverse airflow. Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. Thank you, Adam. So we also want to share with you some additional considerations that the Operational Continuity Work Group has developed. The most recent is an update to the events and gatherings guidance. And as we mindfully reopen and increase activities on campus, the work group has provided guidance for events and gatherings. It's evolved a little bit over the summer months. And as we continue to monitor the public health situation, we've shifted some of our guidance. So please access the Campus Return website for the latest in that guidance. To touch on just a few of the key points, for outdoor events, no event should be more than 1,000 people. All attendees are required to wear face coverings until further notice for outdoor events as well as indoor events. Indoor events are limited to 50% capacity of the posted room occupancy levels. And with event spaces with multiple configurations, the reduced capacity will be determined by the event venue based on the requested setup. Also want to share that there are no restrictions on food and beverage service for the events. However, you should consider alternative service styles to reduce the risk, including prepackaged foods, boxed meals, or a steward served buffet. And as a reminder, any off-campus event sponsored by the campus, so sponsored by UCR, affiliated organization or department must comply with the current and relevant UCR policies as well as the event guidance. So please take a look at the link provided in the presentation and that can be found at the Campus Return website. The next slide. And the other document that Operational Continuity worked on, which goes hand in hand with the events and gatherings guidance, is the non-affiliate and visitor information. Again, this can be found on the Campus Return website. And as we know that there's many different types of people who are on our campus each day. And this guide is an attempt to explain how the campus expects to manage the different categories of people on campus. And so I'll give a couple examples, but please access the document for more details. So the first example is our construction contractors working with PD&C. They've been asked to provide a copy of their CalOSHA's COVID prevention plan requirements. They've been asked to follow our face covering requirements and to follow our signs and postings on buildings and entryways, and to alert the campus immediately if a contractor tests positive for COVID. And this has been in place since March of last year and has been working well. We've documented those cases on our case dashboard. Another example is for those invited guests, like a guest speaker or a participant in an IRB human subject research protocol. For those individuals, they must complete the daily wellness survey as instructed by the host department. And there is a specific daily wellness survey link for visitors that doesn't require authentication into our system. Those invited guests alike will need to follow the campus face covering requirement, as well as any signs posted on the buildings and entryways. Next slide. And lastly, we do want to emphasize the use of the resources and guidelines available on our websites. We encourage you all to download and use the Campus Return Information Quick Reference Guide, which you see on your screen now. It covers more of what we went through today, as well as including links to the websites with more detailed information. And this was developed within the Operational Continuity Work Group with input from our HR partners, as well as our HR officers group and finance group. On that checklist, you'll also notice, this is just a plug for our campus services and resources. You'll notice links to information for parking. There's new parking rates and passes. Student Rec Center, the current status of the Rec Center, you don't need a reservation. The Rec Center is open, masks and a daily wellness survey is required. The libraries are open. Please check their website for hours of operation. And I can pass this on to HR about our faculty and staff assistance program. If Leela or George or Sue want to mention the benefits. Or not, but know that there is, but know that we do have great resources and benefits that are available to our faculty, staff, and their household family members. They're all confidential, and most of these, if not all, are free of charge. Okay, so that concludes our presentation. We did have some pre-submitted questions that we'd like to go through.
All right, so what I'll be doing here is I'll read through the question, and then Sheila will decide who will be answering. So whose responsibility is it to ensure completion of compliance with policy for new employees, example, shared services or internal SSC, supervisor, HR partner?
A great question for Leela or George.
I'll let George take a stab at it first.
Yep, specifically regarding the COVID vaccine policy, an employee will have 8 weeks from their start date to come into compliance with the policy. And previously mentioned, that could include uploading their vaccination proof or submitting a request for an exemption or deferral. As with any other employee that is not in compliance, the HR partner and supervisor will get informed if the employee is not in compliance with the vaccination policy after that 8-week period.
Thank you. Next slide. Is the COVID-19 vaccine a condition of employment that needs to be part of the offer letter? George, probably.
Sure. I can speak to this one briefly as well. I know that the talent management has included a piece in offer letters that includes just notifying a new employee that they have to come into compliance with the COVID vaccine policy in their offer letter.
Yeah, and let me add also to that, that OP currently is actually finalizing wording for, it's going to be actually a separate signed document by any new hire that's going to actually hold them accountable for actually making sure they fall in line with that policy with certain consequences if they do not. So there's actually going to be additional wording to strengthen the message already for new hires as they come on board.
Great, thank you. We'll go to the next question. Staying in line with our COVID vaccine mandates, is there a grace period to comply with the COVID-19 vaccine mandate after hire or start date?
Yeah, but I think this was mentioned previously. There is that 8-week period where a new employee, has to a time frame where they can come into compliance with the policy. During that period, of course, they'd be required to, use face coverings and other NPIs. But there is an 8-week period for the employee to indicate that they are in compliance with the policy.
All right, great. Thank you. Next question. What action should the supervisor or department take if someone is not compliant with masking policies?
I think, as with any other policy, we can guide supervisors in the department on what steps to take progressively to kind of address the situation. I think first kind of starting at the lowest level with conversation with the employee on the importance of compliance, and then it would kind of work up progressively from there. But we are available in ELR and HR to support those types of questions and scenarios.
Great, thank you. Next question. If employees choose not to get vaccinated and do not have an approved exemption or accommodation on file, can they still work on campus if they follow NPI protocols, face covering, testing, social distancing, etc.?
It depends on kind of where we are in the process. We are currently at the point of notifying those employees that are not in compliance that they should come into compliance, and we're at notice 2 of 3. Once you get to the 3rd notice, or the final notice of noncompliance, and you move into the corrective action disciplinary phase, then there is an additional 6 weeks that the employee can follow NPIs. And from after that 6-week period, at kind of the end of the process of the timeline, the policy speaks to the employee no longer being allowed to come to campus.
Great. Next question. What can we do, if anything, to encourage those staff that have not received the clearance to come to campus without accommodations yet to upload their vaccine information?
This is a good question. I think it is, with anything, important to communicate and have open communication with employees. I think in this scenario, we want to make sure that communication does not include specific reference to whether or not the employee has received or has not received the vaccination, but should be rather be directed towards compliance and compliance with the policy. And so I think it would be appropriate for supervisors and department HR to have conversations with employees regarding coming into compliance with the policy versus having conversations about someone's specific vaccination status. And so just to focus that conversation and that communication on compliance with the policy that we're all required to do.
Great, thank you, George. Next question. What about when people need to eat and there are more than one person in the break room? Can people eat in their cubicles?
I'll take a first stab at this response. So physical distancing, as you know, and occupancy limitations are no longer in effect. So what we can do is we can encourage ourselves and each other to use common sense actions to reduce or limit the risk of exposure. And those, as listed on the screen: washing your hands often, keeping hands away from your face, staying home if you're sick and getting vaccinated, We've had a couple questions about, can we have meetings or can we have lunch outside? And the answer is yes. Find a bench, find a table, and use that for informal settings, use it for lunch. That's a great idea. Going outside is definitely better than being indoors, as we have heard from our public health partners. And minimizing the meetings in smaller areas. So meeting in a cubicle area is probably not recommended for large groups of folks. It's better to find the largest room available and use that when you want to work together or perhaps have lunch in the same space. And while physical distancing has been removed from the mandated requirement, it's always a good idea to distance as much as practical in most situations.
Can you confirm whether or not an individual who is not vaccinated can be alone in a room with or without the door closed and not have to wear a mask?
This question has come up quite a bit. Our direction and instructions to the campus that mask requirements can be, that masks can be removed if you're in a room alone with the door closed. And there's a longer explanation right there on the screen. But in essence, if the door is closed, you may remove, and you're alone, you may remove your mask.
Great, thank you. Next question. Where do I go to communicate a safety concern that I have?
It's a great question, and we have lots of different avenues for that. But first and foremost, we would always encourage employees to speak with their supervisors directly for any concerns that they may have, or speak with their department HR partner. If you choose not to go down that path, there are alternatives. You can report COVID-related or general safety-related concerns via the EH&S Report a Concern link. And it's linked, and you can also see it on our homepage. If you'd like to follow up, if you'd like for us to follow up with you directly, please include your contact information, but you can leave your concern anonymous. Lastly, you can also and always report your concerns through the whistleblower hotline. And I'll just add one more item here. So between compliance, labor relations, EH&S, and risk, we do review the concerns that come in and identify ways of ensuring that the concerns have been addressed and that folks that have left their information are contacted for response.
Great. And I think in addition to what Sheila highlighted, there is an emergency, there's an EMIT team, it's an exposure management investigative team that looks at every single COVID-19 reported case here on campus. So that includes students, staff, faculty. What that team does is it looks at the condition in the environment, the awareness for building postings, notifications, but also in the case of potential community spread, there are legislative limitations and requirements that 3 cases or more is a small outbreak. Greater than 20 over a 30-day period is considered a large outbreak. And that team's responsibility is to look at every single case reported on campus, identify where the risk may lie, work with our EH&S and facilities partners. That EMIT team consists of individuals that are within the School of Medicine or the COVID Resource Management team, risk services, facility services, Office of Emergency Management, student health services as well, and human resources. So it's a great team that comes together that is continuing to provide additional insight and protection as to COVID cases that are reported here on campus. So Sheila, then the next section we have, I saw that, thank you everybody who was responding to those live questions and answers. We have a few here that are still within the area. I think if we could look at a couple of questions. I think, do faculty lecturers need to complete remote work agreement forms if they are employees? That might be more of an instructional continuity, but not sure if George or John Stephen, that might be something you would like to respond to.
I don't know the exact answer, but I guess my answer at this point would be to work with your departmental leadership on whether or not that would be necessary for your area.
Great. Another question here is that, in my experience, is that if you have a COVID-19 symptom like a sore throat, and even if you're vaccinated and have a negative COVID test, the wellness check still tells you to stay home. In this situation, are employees supposed to continue staying home until symptom-free, or is there some testing option or clear employees to return to campus? If there is a testing option, will the university be providing these tests? Sue, I'm not sure. Would that be something you would want to respond to?
I really think that that is a COVID management team question that we could probably come back and answer.
Great, fantastic. Thank you much. And we are awaiting an update from our COVID management team as to when they will be holding their briefing as well. And it will cover things like vaccination, testing, as well as additional wellness check concerns there. I think a few of these are additionally still COVID management. There's another question here. My child's school district offers on-demand testing at the school site for a student or employee for free. Will UCR offer that same testing regime? Again, that is a COVID management team question that's there. However, we do have some antigen tests that will likely be coming on campus that CMT will likely go into. Of course, for those that are covered through Kaiser Permanente, you can continue to provide that. But we will provide some updates. We will send these questions to CMT in advance as well for those that are specific to them so that they can address in those. Does anyone else want to add anything to that? Okay. This one's a difficult one, but I think it's an important one. And USCR is already heavily understaffed, and now mixing in a pushback from our offices with COVID still rampant, it's asking for even more retention issues. Whether the naysayers like it or not, hybrid flexibility is the benefit workers will be looking for. UCR needs to force an adaptation or risk major talent loss. Now that's more of a statement, I would say, but I think it's an important context of what we've heard here on campus. Is there anyone within our HR team that would like to provide some feedback on that?
Well, I can start, and then maybe JS or someone else can jump in. But, it's not our intention to discourage anyone from coming to campus. It's more going to be a organizational or business decision. So that's why we are asking that staff members work with their organization, first of all, to find out or be aware of what the organization's business model is, what your roles and responsibilities are, and more importantly, what your role is as it relates to whether or not you can come to campus or not, or if your presence on campus or in the office is needed. That's not anything that human resources can dictate, because we don't know what's happening within each individual organizational unit, which is why that we would prefer you work with your manager or leadership within that organization. If it deems necessary for you to have a hybrid situation, then that's what's deemed necessary. If it's deemed necessary that your presence is needed on campus and the reason is justifiable, then your presence is needed on campus. Coming to or involving human resources, we will do the same thing, have that collaborative conversation with you as well as with the leadership within your organization to make sure that it makes sense. But I guess at the end of the day, there has to be a viable justification for you to either work remote or work on campus. Again, we will just partner with you or with the leadership to make sure that that is looked at.
Yeah, I just add the senior leadership has been really trying to push for flexibility and understanding as much as possible. We do realize that not every single role can be 100% remote, even though we have quite a few of those people that are 100% remote. But then we're also looking at hybrid schedules, and it has really been pushed not just from HR, but at the highest levels of the campus as well. I think it was just was it earlier this week or last week, the provost sent out an email discussing the need to let people work from home and for additional flexibility if they may have somebody who's immunocompromised or young children at home. Again, adding to the kinds of considerations that our leaders should be looking at when determining if somebody can work from home or not. It's unfortunate that we can't accommodate every situation, but I can really say that we have really been pushing, and I've heard it directly from senior leadership as well, to push us for as much flexibility as possible. And even in a couple of cases, I know Vice Chancellor Bomati has actually called other deans and actually one other vice chancellor when he heard about a situation where it didn't seem like as much flexibility was being utilized as possible. So it is coming from the highest levels of leadership that we do understand the need for flexibility, and we're working through it the best we can.
Great, thank you. Sheila, I have two questions here for you. I think the first one's primarily important regarding events. It says, as per events that include public patrons, how do we effectively manage that all patrons, potentially hundreds, adhere to the return to campus protocols?
That is a great question, Jason. The idea is that the COVID management team is managing the daily wellness survey. They've designed it for visitors to attend, and it should be coordinated with the event sponsor. So my best advice is to work through the logistics, knowing that the expectation is that the daily wellness survey gets completed.
Great. And then the second question is, can you define closed door? Some people work with the doors slightly open and without a mask.
Let's aim for keeping the door shut all the way. You should hear a click. It should be engaged. You'd have to turn the handle to open it and not just push it open. But closed means closed.
Great, thank you. All right, and John Stephen, and the question for you is, does the vaccinated percentage for employees include all staff and faculty that are working both on campus and remote?
The numbers that are posted online right now are about it's about the faculty and staff and students too that are actually on campus. So someone who's 100% remote is not actually reflected in those numbers. And that's very intentional because what we're talking about are the people on campus, as the policy addresses. It's about the people on campus and attending our facilities. That's who we're really trying to track. So even if 100% of the people that are working remotely are vaccinated, that's not going to actually show up in those numbers.
Great, thank you for that. And we do have a parent, I believe, joining with us, and I hope Suzanne is still here. Monty, this is a great question. We're always excited when individuals want to donate and reduce our overall cost. The question is, how can we help as parents, for example, donate COVID Lysol masks, or I guess really not COVID Lysol, but Lysol masks, anything especially for our child's professors or offices?
So Sheila might want to also help me with this, but my understanding is that the campus has received a very large volume of supplies, that there are not any concerns with supply availability. I know EH&S is overseeing the distribution of masks, so anyone who's interested in getting masks, I'm not quite sure what their policy is, actually can receive them through EH&S. I also believe we're going to be distributing those to the departments. And I think that was a request from department leadership, organizational leadership, so that any faculty who wants to have masks on hand to distribute to their students, et cetera, would be available. So I think we have plenty of availability, and I think we're gonna have a couple avenues to do that. In regards to disinfecting, it's interesting because some disinfecting does require certain guidelines. I put it in one of the answers. Sometimes a spray needs to sit for 2 minutes before it's cleaned. And so our custodial staff, for example, has been trained on, back in March of April of last year of 2020, when we received this different cleaning supply that we're using on a regular basis, there was a special training that took place to ensure that. But we have ample supplies of the hand sanitizers, the disinfecting kits. Anyone who wants to do anything personal that they have a preference of a brand or a preference, et cetera, then obviously the family can come together and provide it for that student. Or, if that particular professor chooses to do that, or that particular manager of a department wants to have something special, they are welcome to do that. We just always suggest that people read the guidance on that wipe or that spray, and just to make sure they're using it effectively. But my understanding is the campus has ample supplies. We're not concerned about running out, even with our public hand sanitizers at entryways of all the buildings. Sheila, I don't know if you want to add anything.
You've covered it all, Monty. Thank you. I think one of the main concerns with our chemical disinfectants is that we want to make sure that they are EPA approved for appropriate disinfection for the COVID-19 virus. Number one. Number two, that they're chemically compatible with the surfaces that will be sprayed or wiped. And number three, that they don't cause unnecessary risk or harm to not just our custodial staff, but for the end user who's applying it. So we've carefully monitored the types of disinfectants that we've approved to be on campus, and we'd like to consider that as our primary defense. But again, if others would like to bring in some from home or donate some, we're happy to, if you have questions or you want to make sure that it's okay to use, we're happy as EH&S to review the safety data sheets on those as well. And then lastly, for masks, we have thousands of masks available, both fabric masks as well as disposable surgical masks available. And we do have a supply of, again, the N95 respirators for voluntary use for those that have an exemption that would like to wear a higher level of masking.
Great. Thank you for those updates, I think. And we have time for probably one last question. And the last question would likely go to John Steven or the HR team. The issue here for work flexibility is not senior leadership, but with middle to upper management. Are there any resources you can provide to help equip and empower this group so that they can best support and advocate for their staff?
Great. So it's funny, I've had this question asked both directions, where it was kind of, alleged that it's the supervisors or the middle managers that were kind of quote unquote against letting people have flexible schedules or hybrid schedules. And then I heard the opposite question, where it's not my supervisors against it, it's their bosses that are against it. So this is an interesting question to ask. What I would say is that if it doesn't work out with you and your manager can't give you a good rationale in terms of why you may or may not be able to work more flexibly, then I'd encourage you to go to their manager. If that's not a comfortable situation, because I know for some employees, going to your manager's manager feels like going over their head, that's not comfortable. I would highly encourage you to go to your HR partner, your local HR partner, who can actually intervene on your behalf. A lot of times without actually not necessarily talking about your specific issue, but talking about it more generally with the leadership within that department to actually help out that way. And then, and a lot of times, sometimes those HR partners will bring central HR into play if we still think that it's not a reasonable response in terms of allowing for kind of creating a more flexible work environment in that situation. So that's where I would really encourage the people to go. And I would also encourage them to kind of think through for themselves ahead of time, how can they actually work remotely or in this hybrid schedule and still actually support the operations of the business. So sometimes I think we don't do a very good job of educating our leaders about how I could do this. And sometimes that can actually help as well.
And just to add on to that really quick, EOD has put out a number of different types of e-courses, LinkedIn Learning e-courses, different types of facilitations, managing in the modern workplace, team dynamics. So all of these instructor-led, virtual-led courses we have to support not only supervisors, but individual contributors with even how to have those types of conversations. So I would encourage you to visit the EOD webpage and take a look at the professional development monthlies to see what courses are available. Because for the last couple of months, we have centered it around flexible work, remote work, as well as anything that, has to center around, how to make those collaborative teams work in the best way possible. So from a skill development aspect, those are some of the things that I would recommend you take a look at.
Great, thank you, everybody. Sheila.
Well, we've come to the conclusion of our presentation. It's 2:01, so we would like to thank you for your time and joining us today. If you have any other questions that were not asked today, I think we'll have a transcript of the questions that were asked. We'll compile them and put them on our operational continuity work group website. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to email us at ehspublichealth@ucr.edu. Thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.